2 minutes past 9 on a December morning in 1917, a railway dispatcher in Halifax, Canada, tapped out the last message of his life. He had already left once. A sailor had burst in and told him to run. Everyone was running. He came back because he remembered that a passenger train full of people was due into the harbour station in minutes, and no one had told it to stop. He signed off with 2 words: "Goodbye, boys." 90 seconds later, the largest man-made explosion in history before the atomic bomb erased 2 square kilometers of his city. This is the story of that morning and of the 20 minutes when everyone stood at their windows to watch. In 1917, Halifax was one of the most important cities in the British war effort and one of the busiest harbours on Earth. Every convoy carrying men, horses, grain, and munitions from North America to the trenches of Europe assembled here, behind the anti-submarine nets, in a harbour so deep and sheltered sailors called the city the Warden of the North. The war had made Halifax rich and crowded. The working-class district of Richmond climbed the slope above the harbour's narrowest point. Wooden houses, schools, churches, factories, all facing the water, because the water was the show. Ships from every allied nation, every single day. All that traffic had to pass through a bottleneck called the Narrows, a channel less than a kilometre wide with the city pressed against both shores. Wartime rules governed who passed and when. Like most rules in the 4th year of a world war, they had grown flexible under pressure. On the morning of December 6th, 2 ships entered the Narrows from opposite ends. The outbound ship was the Immo, a Norwegian steamer chartered for Belgian relief, running late and running fast, on the wrong side of the channel after dodging traffic. The inbound ship was a French freighter called the Mont-Blanc. Read her manifest slowly. Nearly 3,000 tons of high explosive packed hull to hatches, with drums of aviation fuel lashed on top. A floating bomb assembled in New York and sent to join a convoy at Halifax, because U-boats had made the open Atlantic too dangerous for her to cross alone. Under peacetime rules, she would have flown a red warning flag. Under wartime rules, a red flag was an advertisement to enemy agents. So the Mont-Blanc entered a crowded harbour looking like any other tramp steamer. What happened next took less than 15 minutes and has been argued over for a century. Signals misread, whistles answered wrong, 2 captains each holding course expecting the other to yield. At the last moment both turned into each other. The collision itself was gentle, barely a dent. But the scrape struck sparks, the sparks found the spilled benzol, and fire took the Mont-Blanc's deck in seconds. Her crew, who alone in the harbour knew exactly what was under their feet, made a decision history has judged harshly and honestly. They rowed for their lives, shouting warnings in French, a language almost no one on shore understood. The burning ship, abandoned and unmanned, drifted with the current toward the Richmond shore and came to rest gently against Pier 6. Now watch what a city does when nobody tells it anything. A burning ship in the harbour was not a warning to Halifax. It was a spectacle. The fire was spectacular. The benzol drums burst one by one, throwing balls of oily flame hundreds of feet up. People crowded to the waterfront to watch. Children paused on their way to school. Workers gathered at factory windows facing the harbour. Glass windows, thousands of them, everyone a lens with a face behind it. Firefighters raced toward Pier 6 to save the pier. Sailors from nearby ships rowed toward the Mont-Blanc to help, Almost no one in that crowd knew the cargo. The handful who did spent those 20 minutes running through the streets trying to be believed. One of them reached the railway yard, where dispatcher Vince Coleman was working the morning trains. Coleman ran with everyone else, then stopped in the street, remembering the overnight passenger train from St. John, due in along the harbourside track. Hundreds of people riding directly toward Pier 6 with no idea. He went back to his key. The message went out along the line. The train stopped short, and at 4.5 minutes past 9, the fire aboard the Mont-Blanc reached her hold. The Mont-Blanc ceased to exist in roughly 1/15,000th of a second. The explosion, measured today at around 2.9 kilotons, was the largest ever produced by human beings until Hiroshima. The ship's anchor shank, weighing half a ton, landed more than 3 kilometers away. A wall of water rose from the harbor floor and washed over the shore. The shockwave shattered windows 60 kilometers from the city. Richmond, the district that had climbed the slope for the view, was erased. Around 1,600 people died in the first moments. The toll would approach 2,000. 9,000 were injured. And the windows did what glass does. An entire city had been watching the fire through panes that arrived in the same instant as the light, as blades. Hundreds of people lost their eyes that morning. Halifax would afterward become, out of necessity, one of the world's centers of care for the blind. Every death in this paragraph was someone at a window, on a pier, at a school desk, at a fire engine. The firefighters at Pier 6 died at their pumper. The sailors rowing to help died mid-stroke. The stop train from St. John did not. Its passengers stepped out, unhurt, into a city that had ended, and the rail cars became the first hospital wards. Vince Coleman was killed at his telegraph key. He was 45. The message he stayed to send is the reason this chapter has any survivors in it at all. History was not finished with Halifax. The next morning, as survivors dug for their families in the wreckage with bare hands, a blizzard arrived, 40 centimeters of snow onto a city with no windows, no roofs, and thousands still buried. Rescuers worked in whiteout. Some of the trapped, kept alive by pockets in the rubble, froze before they could be reached. And then, through that same snow, help came, and the first and fastest of it came from a foreign country. The city of Boston loaded a train with doctors, nurses, and supplies within hours of the news and drove it north through the blizzard, plows ahead of the locomotive. Nova Scotia never forgot it. Every December since 1971, the province cuts its finest evergreen and sends it to Boston, where it stands as the city's official Christmas tree. Most of the people who walk past it have no idea it is a thank you note for a morning in 1917, still being answered more than a century later. An inquiry blamed one captain, then the appeals blamed both, and the truth was what it usually is, a system running too fast in the fourth year of a war with a bomb in a bottleneck and every safety rule bent by urgency. No villain, which is its own kind of frightening. But the record keeps what matters. A man with 90 seconds chose a train full of strangers over the door. Goodbye, boys, and hold up the train. As we step out of the shadows for today, I want to thank you for your time. There are many more grim truths hidden in the past, waiting to be told. To ensure you're here for the next one, please subscribe. If you are ready to explore another dark chapter right now, you can click the video on your screen. Stay curious.